evening. I'm Kara Shovlin, and welcome to From the Scotchwood, where each month I sit down with a prominent member of the Scotch Plains community. And tonight, the prominent member is Mayor Martin Marks. Welcome. It's good to see you again.
Good to see you again, Kara.
And we are nearing the end of your reign here in Scotch Plains. You want to tell me a little bit about what that's like?
We're referring to it as a reign. Oh my goodness! Wow, I feel like a real monarch here.
Well,
yeah, this is the end for me. It's at least here in Scotch Plains government. This is my 12th and final year on the Scotch Plains Council.
Call that a reign? That constitutes a reign.
I suppose. And the last 9 of which I've had the distinct honor and fun of being the mayor. It's a little bit bittersweet. There's a part of me that really wants to stay. There's a part of me that thinks it's time to move on. And you know, there are many politicians out there, whether at the municipal level or all the way to the top, that somehow think they're irreplaceable. And I am not one of them. I'm glad I'm going out on my own terms. I had 3 successful elections here. I am duly honored by that, by the citizens, you know, having the faith in me. But you know, I'm not going to overstay my welcome.
Well, I don't know if there's any danger in that, but why don't we take it back a little bit and give me a little background on your life in politics and how it began and how long you've lived here. And
sure, yeah, well, I've been a Union County boy all my life. I grew up in Cranford, went to Cranford High School, and then, you know, went away to school. Once I got married and got settled down, my wife and I moved to Scotch Plains about 1990. And one of the very first things I did as I got on the phone, found out who the mayor was, and say, I'm new to town. I'd like to get involved in some way in the community. Didn't necessarily think it would be politically, but just get me involved in the community. And the mayor at the time was Irene Schmidt, a very nice woman who had served for quite a while at that point. She invited me to come down to the annual reorganization meeting, which is held every January 1st, where every new council member is sworn in, all the committee appointments are made. She invited me to an after party with the Republican Party, and we got to talking, and she said, hey, how would you like to serve on one of our commissions or board? And I said, sure, that's what I called you about. And I was appointed to the Environmental Commission. This was probably about 1991, 92 maybe at the latest. And I wasn't much of an environmentalist at the time. I learned a little bit more, but one thing led to the other. I got involved in the Republican Party, working on other people's campaigns. You know, back then it was knocking on doors and making phone calls, stuffing envelopes, and got appointed to the Planning Board, which is a pretty prominent position in Scotch Plains, served there for a few years. And then in '96, the party asked me to run for the town council. And I was successful, and that started my political career.
And tell me about how the town council worked at the time when you joined.
Right, well, there are 5 members of the town council, and there still are today, and they are elected at large, meaning the entire community votes for those 5 seats. We don't do it by ward like some other communities do, like Westfield. And every year we decided amongst ourselves, the 5 of us, who would serve as mayor for 1 year. And that would be done, and then the following year we'd choose again, and usually it would rotate. And then in 1999, a referendum was put on the ballot to change all that, to designate one of those council seats as the mayor's seat, to be elected directly by the people of Scotch Plains, and it passed overwhelmingly. So at the beginning of 2002, very soon after that election, I became Scotch Plains' last appointed mayor. And then later in 2000 was the first direct election for mayor, and I was successful then, and I was successful in 2004 as well. So when all is said and done, it'll be 1 year as an appointed mayor and 2 4-year terms as an elected mayor for a total of 9 years.
Wow.
It is. It's been a long time, and as we look back, I will be the longest serving mayor in Scotch Plains history, which goes back quite a long way, and I wear that with distinction and with humble honor as well.
That's fantastic. And did you, when you decided when you moved here to pick up the phone and get involved, why? Is that something you've always been interested in, or politics, local government, the community, so forth?
Sure. I mean, part of it was, you know, being civic-minded, wanting to be involved in my brand new community. It was the very first house that, you know, my wife and I owned, so I really wanted to be involved. I always had an interest in politics and always a fascination with it, but never really quite getting involved. Actually, perhaps my first start in politics was when I was in school. When I was in dental school, actually, I was a little bit outspoken on behalf of our classmates with the administration of the school, and they came to me and said, Marty, you need to be our class president. So I said, okay, fine, I'll be our class president. So for my final 2 years of dental school, I was our class president. So that was my start in politics. And I've always been comfortable, speaking with people, speaking in public, arguing, if you will, the debate. I love the debate. And so I've always had an interest. And then, by picking up that phone and making the call to the mayor, that kind of started the ball rolling.
Sure, yeah. Now, I asked you this before. I don't know the answer because I'm not a Scotch Plains resident, but you told me. I asked if the mayor of Scotch Plains is a paid position, and your answer is?
Well, most municipal officials, whether they be mayor or council members in New Jersey, unless you're in a real big city, it's a part-time job. Some towns, they don't pay you anything. In Scotch Plains, we make a grand total of about $5,800 per year. And I just did a random calculation one day when I had nothing better to do with the amount of time that I put in with all of the official and ceremonial things I do. By the way, I'm off the clock right now, so I'm not counting it. But it comes out to about 17 cents an hour.
Wow.
So, I'm making a lot of money. I'm
That
not going to
is
be able to
a lot.
retire on my council salary, unfortunately.
Oh, darn. So now tell me what it is you do for a living.
Well, obviously I went to dental school, so I'm a dentist.
Yeah, I didn't know
so,
that. I just learned this about you.
That's right. So I'm a dentist. I'm an endodontist, actually, which is a root canal specialist. I know everybody hates the endodontist.
Luckily, I've never been to one.
Well, there you go. It's not that bad, actually. The
Good.
reputation far exceeds what it's really all about.
Okay, good to know.
That's a story for another day. But that has afforded me the ability to work, make a decent living for the family. My wife works real hard for the family too, and freeing up some time so I can do something that I truly love, and that's working in the community, being involved in government and politics. Because quite frankly, doing root canals all day long, after a while it gets a little monotonous. Being the mayor, there's something new every day.
Yeah.
I've learned more about the law, about public relations, about engineering, about sewers, you name it, and it's been a great learning experience for me.
I'll bet. Over the years, you've been in the town council and as mayor and/or for 12 years.
Correct.
So that's a long time to have experience about what goes on in the town. Can you give me some of the highlights or some of your most memorable moments along the way, good or bad?
Sure. Well, two of my most memorable moments were with you, Kara. If you remember, a few years back, you were on the Make You Want to Dance show, and you invited me, the mayor of
Yep.
Scotch Plains, and we also had the mayor of Fanwood,
Yep.
Colleen Marr, there, and we did the cha-cha on
Yes, you
television.
did.
Totally mortified my kids, but that's okay.
You did well. You did
and
well.
then subsequent to that, I was solicited to become General Cornwallis in the movie Two Lords and a Lady, which was spearheaded by a local committee to save the Frazee House and restore the Frazee House,
Right.
and all the great story that goes along with it. So they made
Right.
me a nice red coat uniform. I had the powdered wig. They put me up on a horse, which was my first experience on a horse ever, and I was Lord Cornwallis, and that's been shown on Scotch Plains Television numerous times.
Numerous times.
And I know we had a grand premiere, and you were there, and you interviewed me in all my red coat regalia.
Yes, I did.
And so those were without a doubt two kind of humorous highlights.
That was impressive, yes.
It was impressive, but I don't know if they were earth-shattering moments as far as all of Scotch Plains, but they're
fun nonetheless.
Fun nonetheless. But there have been many successes over the years, and I think when I look back on my 12 years, I think perhaps the greatest successes we've realized is what we've done in recreation. With our parks, our playgrounds, our ball fields. Several years back, it became readily apparent to us that with the burgeoning growth of youth activities, whether it be football, baseball, softball, soccer, which is so big in Scotch Plains, now lacrosse is taking hold, and so many kids participating, the number of fields that we had for them and the quality of those fields was woefully lacking.
Right.
And so we took on an initiative helped by our Recreation Commission with a great bunch of volunteers, a recreation director, and a recreation department to go out and find new places for new facilities, renovate and refurbish some of our existing facilities, work with other government entities such as Union County, Fanwood, the Board of Education to really bring together some state-of-the-art complexes. And when I look back on my career, I think we've made great strides. And someone who is so much into athletics myself, I'm still a kid at heart. I still play softball and tennis and golf and all those things. I am particularly proud of the gains we've made in recreation.
And do you feel there's still a long way to go, or you feel like you're ahead of the curve here?
As far as recreation, there's always something to do. We've just about, in addition to creating brand new venues, we've pretty much hit all of our fields at this point in terms of renovations and upgrades. And just this year, we have opened a brand new lighted artificial turf soccer/lacrosse field at Southside Field behind our firehouse, which is very popular and much needed, because you just can't overuse an artificial turf field. You don't need to rest it at all. You don't have to worry about the grass growing, and the kids just love it. And we get to expand our play because we're doing it under the lights. So that was really the crowning glory, and that's a 2008 project that's come to fruition. We have Brookside Park is probably one of the last remaining parks that still is in need of some upgrades, and that'll probably happen in the next couple of years under the next mayor.
Very good. Is this some of the things that went on between with the shared services with Fanwood? Did some of that happen along with Fanwood and the Board of Education as
Right,
well?
without a doubt. I mean, we have a unique relationship. We have a joint school district, of course, but when I first became mayor, or very soon after that, we established a formal shared service committee with representation from the Board of Education of the joint school district, Fanwood Borough Council, Scotch Plains Township Council, and they meet on a regular basis and discuss what opportunities are out there for sharing. And we certainly use those for soliciting grant money, and we got additional grant money because of that shared relationship, and pooling our own financial resources. And for instance, Park Middle School Field of Dreams, we refurbished there. We worked with the county over at the Ponderosa Park for new soccer fields there, over at the Votech for new lighted baseball and soccer fields there. So those kinds of sharing opportunities cannot be overrated. And now with state government really putting the pressure on municipalities to share and even to merge, they become even more important.
Right. Why don't you maybe, so that we can get a better idea of what your life was like doing all of this, both your normal day job and your duties as mayor, can you take us through a typical day? What would it be like any day, or maybe sort of many days merged into one, or whatever
Sure.
could
Well,
sort of illustrate it for us?
Yeah, fortunately, because of what I do professionally, I can more or less schedule my own time. And I make a decent living as a dentist, so I don't have to put in a 40-hour week in order to, put bread on the table and, help the family out. So, maybe I put in 28 to 35 hours as a dentist, but in any given week as a mayor, except during the summertime where we're more on an abbreviated schedule, I'm probably at town hall 3 to 4 days a week, not all day long, but a couple hours here, a couple hours there. And then in the evening, every Tuesday, we have our council meetings. Sometimes they last into the wee hours of the morning. The mayor is also a member of the planning board, which meets every other Monday night. And then we have other liaison assignments. For instance, I'm a liaison to the fire department. They meet once a month. We have the environmental commission. They meet once a month. So in any given week, I'm probably out 3 to 4 nights a week doing official things. But as a mayor, you're also expected to do ceremonial things as well. For instance, what I'm doing here right now as a mayor. I mean, I would call it more ceremonial than official, but it is a time commitment nonetheless. I get the wonderful opportunity to perform wedding ceremonies, which is great. I've done dozens upon dozens of those. I go to Eagle Scout and Girl Scout and Gold Scout awards and give proclamations and get to speak at them. People have grand openings of their stores or their businesses, so I go there. So there's a lot of social and ceremonial things to do that eat up quite a bit of time as well. But like I said, it's something different every day, and for the most part, it has been incredibly enjoyable and fulfilling.
Terrific. Well, right at that note, why don't we take a quick break, and we'll come back and chat some more.
Absolutely, sure.
Stick around. We'll be right back.
If you're a Scotch Plains resident over 55, here's an important announcement for you. The Scotch Plains Golden Agers holds meetings weekly, September through June, every Thursday at the Scotch Hills Country Club, and you're invited. Activities run from 10 a.m. until 3 p.m. every Thursday and include guest speakers, special luncheons, crafts, bingo, parties for special occasions, and a whole lot more. There's bus service available for members. To find out more, call the number on your screen. If you're a senior, you're golden. You're watching Scotch Plains Television, winner of 6 Hometown Video Awards for Programming Excellence. Scotch Plains Television, your town, your TV.
Welcome back. So we were just talking a little bit about some of the maybe higher points or some of the accomplishments that you've been a part of in your tenure here. Maybe you can tell me a little bit about some of your challenges, lower points, just for a minute. We can touch on that.
Well, you know, being on the council in municipal government, there's always challenges every day, and perhaps the biggest challenge of all is dealing with the public, who, for the most part in Scotch Plains, they're a great bunch of people. I mean, I brag about Scotch Plains citizens all the time. Some of them are a little bit more difficult to deal with, and that's understandable. But that's always a challenge, to be able to deal with them in an appropriate manner, especially if it's done in a public forum, on our televised council meetings on Scotch Plains Television, for instance. So it takes a special challenge. You know, talking about highlights, I mean, people ask me all the time, what's the best part about being mayor? And we talked about that first phone call I made to Mayor Schmidt back in the early 90s, and I think about it, and had I not made that call and got my foot in the door and got to this point, there literally would be thousands upon thousands of people that I never would have crossed paths with, including you. And many of these people have become my close friends, very dear friends, and it's really enhanced my life, and that's wonderful. But along with that, and meeting all those new people and making those friendships, occasionally you're going to lose some people along the way. And that were probably some of the lower points during my tenure on the council. A few years back, we suddenly lost our township attorney, Doug Hansen, who served the town for several years and became a very dear friend and just the nicest guy you ever want to meet in your life. He was a big man physically, but with the biggest heart as well. Always wanted to do the right thing, always wanted to help, and he died in the winter, I believe it was '05, and it was a tragic loss, and you know, it was tough for all of us. And not too soon after that, we had our newly installed police chief, Mark Zyla, suddenly pass away as well. And Mark was a very young man, you know, in his 40s, young family, and he was a good friend of mine. We played on the same softball team together, and there was a tremendous personal and professional shock. And you know, we lost someone from our recreation department, you know, Frederica Strickland. She was a young mother as well. So when these things happen, it's tough. It's tough to deal with. And in addition to performing the happy things, you know, the wedding ceremonies that I get to do as mayor, and I've done dozens upon dozens of them, which is just wonderful because everybody's happy, nobody's complaining. It's great.
Right.
But by the same token, I've attended more wakes and funerals than I would ever care to. I've had my share of them. But that's part of the territory with, you know, as you go through life, there's going to be loss. So those were probably some of the lowest moments, losing staff who were ultimately very good friends.
Sure, I would imagine. That comes with knowing so many people, I would imagine, obviously.
Indeed.
What about, maybe not as personal, but things within the work situation that were challenges?
The greatest challenge to any municipal official, whether they're elected as a council member or a mayor, is dealing with providing the kind of services that your residents expect and deserve with the limited resources we have. And for the most part, municipal resources are entirely based on property taxes. Other levels of government, such as federal government, they have all sorts of revenues, income taxes, you know, state taxes, you name it, gasoline tax. We could be here all night if I named them all. State government, you know, has an income tax, sales tax, a whole bunch of other fees and whatnot. But municipal government only has the property tax to deal with. Now, we as municipal officials did not create that system. We were given that system. The state government created that system. So it's just something we have to deal with. And if you think about it, the property tax is probably the most unfair tax of all because it doesn't really take into account your ability to pay. Whereas income tax, the more money you make, the more you pay.
Percentage, sure.
Sales tax, the more stuff you buy, the more you pay. But with property taxes, it really is an unfair and extremely unpopular tax. And New Jersey has the dubious distinction of having the highest property taxes in the nation. And I don't think there's even a close second. And so it's difficult being able to tell your residents, first of all, we're not the only town that has this problem. They might think it, but it's not the case. It's across the board. 566 municipalities, you know, there's a problem there. And second, you know, trying to deal with state government. They're the ones who created the system. They are also the ones who have the power to change the system. And unfortunately, they haven't really displayed the heart or the guts or the backbone or any other part of the anatomy associated with courage, I won't get too graphic here, to do it. And that's been incredibly frustrating for me.
Yeah.
I've been advocating for a long time that what New Jersey needs is to convene a constitutional convention that will specifically address the property tax crisis in New Jersey. Even though our state legislators and our governor have the power to change the system on their own, because they haven't displayed the courage to do so, if we had a convention, it would be a citizens' convention. Delegates would be elected. They would go to this convention for the sole purpose of, you know, sharpening their pencils and coming up with a new system that ultimately would go back to the voters on a referendum, say, is this a good system? Should we change? Vote yes or vote no. But unfortunately, we can't get off the starting line as far as that convention, because it takes state government to say, well, let's put the referendum on the ballot. And they haven't done it. So I've been, you know, I'm an executive board member for the New Jersey State League of Municipalities, which represents all 566 municipalities. And I've been traveling the state, trying to lobby state government, going to Senate hearings, Assembly hearings, speaking with my fellow mayors, and trying to help them, you know, get to off the dime to get the Constitutional Convention off the dime, and it just hasn't worked just yet.
What's the resistance at the state level? Why not try to change it?
That's an excellent question, and perhaps if you had a governor sitting across from you or a state legislator, that would be a great question to ask him, because I've been asking that same question for the last 12 years, and I'm not quite sure why. I'm not really quite sure why. Somehow I think that our state government representatives want to keep the system the way it is, because the perception from the public is it's the municipal officials' fault for high property taxes. It's their problem.
Right.
And if they all of a sudden take it on as an issue, now it's their problem.
No, it's their problem.
So that may be one of the
sense.
reasons, but I'm not going to pretend I know the answer, what motivates them. I've tried to be one of them. I had a, you know, during my tenure as a member of the town council as mayor, I had an unsuccessful run for state senate back in 2003. It was a great experience. It was a very difficult district for Republicans, and I happen to be a Republican, so it was a close election, but I wasn't successful. But, you know, the premise of my candidacy was we got to go reform the property tax system and do it immediately. So they've been nibbling around the edges for a long time, but
is it just a lot of work? Is it just too much work to change the system? And if so, how does it change?
Well, my guess is that you would have to, number one, just talking on the revenue side, is you would have to shift away from property taxes to another form of taxation. And maybe that's, you know, shifting
and
to...
make it relative to income and ability to pay.
Exactly. And if they were ever to consider raising the income tax for the purpose of, don't forget, back in the mid-'70s, Governor Brendan Byrne said, let's enact an income tax for New Jersey. And why did he say that? He said, because we have a property tax crisis, and if we start an income tax, we'll be able to solve the property tax problem. Right, that worked, right? No, of course it didn't. So if anything is going to be done, it would have to be literally written into the Constitution in blood that any additional income tax raised would have to offset property taxes. Property taxes would have to be lowered or, in fact, eliminated totally if we're going to shift to another form of taxation. That's the only way I feel it would be appropriate, and the only thing that I would support. So envision, for instance, if we, you know, they say we're going to raise the income tax 1%. My feeling would be all the additional income tax raised here in Scotch Plains should stay here in Scotch Plains.
Right.
And go to a mandatory reduction in property tax bills.
Right.
Right now, the state government takes money in sales tax and income taxes, and they spread it around as they see fit. And unfortunately, that money gets spread to more urban areas, your Newarks, your Camdens, your Jersey cities, your Pattersons. These are, especially when it comes to school aid, there's 611 school districts in this state, and 30 of them get half of all state aid, billions upon billions of dollars, and the remaining 581 school districts, like Scotch Plains Fanwood, have to split up the remaining half.
Yeah.
So we don't get our fair share for what we're sending to Trenton. So
Sure.
Lots of problems there. Ultimately, and I've said this time and time again, every once in a while we have to put the mirror up to ourselves as voters and say, maybe the problem's with us, because we keep sending the same self-serving, do-nothing cowards down to Trenton who don't want to tackle this issue. And if we keep sending the same people back, they're getting the message from the people, their constituents, hey, you're doing a great job.
Yeah,
So keep up the good work.
Right.
So sometimes you got to look in the mirror and say, hey, maybe it's our own darn fault.
How much does frustration play into being mayor when there's something like this that you feel passionate about, that it's hard to push forward?
Oh, it's incredibly frustrating. It's frustrating not only as a mayor, but as a property taxpayer. I mean,
Sure.
I pay property taxes too, and a rather handsome sum
High.
as well. So it's frustrating for me, and to see people, especially our seniors, who have lived in this town for decades and have built it up through their own hard work to where it is today, and then they aren't able to stay in the homes they lived in for so long because they can't afford it, and they have to leave, and not only leave Scotch Plains, but perhaps leave the state.
New Jersey, yeah.
It's heartbreaking to see that. So it's not only frustrating, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And and of course, as costs go up to do the business of the town, the only alternative we have to turn to is property taxes, and that's the real frustrating part of it. Absolutely.
Right. Well, in your absence, how do you see the face of Scotch Plains politics changing, and new people coming
Sure.
in and others leaving? What do you see happening?
The face of municipal government in Scotch Plains is going to change drastically, as we all know. And Tom Atkins, our municipal manager for 28 years, retired in 2008, and he is perhaps one of my closest friends that I've made in municipal government. I have the utmost respect for him. He is really one of the preeminent managers, not only in New Jersey, but perhaps across the nation. I think he's recognized by his peers as that as well. So his loss is tremendous, without a doubt. And we don't have a replacement because he's irreplaceable, but we have a successor. And our successor is Michael Capobianco, who in his own right, very bright young man, and I think he has great potential, and he's entering at an age that Tom Atkins entered at 28 years ago. So he's a young man, so he's got a future ahead of him. Hopefully he'll be here for 28 years, which would be totally unusual because usually that doesn't happen in municipal government. But I certainly wish him all the best, and I've had the opportunity to work with him just for a few short months, and I think he's very capable. I think he'll do a wonderful job. But of course, in 2009, I will not be here with 12 years of experience, and one of my other very good friends, Councilwoman Paulette Coronado, is retiring as well at the end of the year. She has 8 years of service, so you're losing 20 years of service by 2 council members, 28 years of service by a municipal manager. So the 2009 face of Scotch Plains government will be very, very different. And I wish my successor the best of success. I give them my sympathies as well, because the challenges will still be there, and perhaps even magnified from what I've had to deal with, especially the financial pressure. So best of luck, and I plan on being a resident here for a while, so please do a good job.
Right. Well, what are your future plans, speaking of?
Well, that's a good question. I absolutely love politics and government. I find it fascinating and challenging. I don't have any specific plans to run for office at this point. I know I won't be running for municipal office, that's for certain. But in politics, so much of it is being in the right place at the right time. And you just never know. Every 10 years, they do a census in the nation, and after the census, they redraw the district lines, not only for state legislative districts, but also congressional districts. And so you never know where those district lines are going to be, how they're going to be gerrymandered. There's a good word from your high school government class. And that kind of dictates the fortunes of politicians, because usually they're gerrymandered in such a way that they're either going to favor Republicans or favor Democrats. And with that said, I don't know. I may run for a higher office one day, and then again I may not. I suspect I will always, because of my passion for it, I'll always be involved in some way, perhaps in a behind the scenes, in a non-elected facet, and that would be fine, and of course, you know, I've got my family, you know, I have a daughter who's just starting college, I have a son who's a sophomore at Scotch Plains High School. He'll be going to college soon, so I might have to put in a few more hours, you know, doing the root canals, if you know what I mean,
Right.
in order to help pay for the tuition costs. My wife is working at capacity at this point. She puts a lot of time into her job, and she works real hard. So she's helping out along the way too, in a big way. But we might have to put a few more hours doing dentistry. And heck, I've got so many other interests. I play softball, I play golf, I play tennis. I could probably fill up 3 lifetimes, which is great. You know,
Yeah.
so many people are just so engrossed with their work and they've got nothing else.
Right.
I am very fortunate to have a great family that I love to hang around with, both my immediate family and, you know, extended family. Like I said, I've made some great friends along the way, thousands of people I've met. I plan on continuing those friendships, even though I won't be working with them. So I'll have plenty to do, Karen.
It sounds like you will.
You bet.
Well, Mayor Marks, I want to thank you for coming at the Scotchwood tonight and talking with us. I really appreciate it. And we're going to say goodnight. We had a
And-
wonderful evening. I
And
appreciate it.
I appreciate you asking me to be here. Scotchwood is a wonderful place. I've had many a meal
It
here.
is, isn't it? I know. Thank you to the Scotchwood Diner here on Route 22 in Scotch Plains. We appreciate them having us. And we'll see you next time. Stick around.